If you procrastinate, you may be missing something your own mind has been trying to tell you. Something you feel whenever you sit down to do something important, but don't quite recognize. In our last deep dive, we looked at what happens underneath procrastination, the pressure, the resistance, and the relief that keeps the cycle going. But understanding this cycle is one thing. Changing what happens next is another. Neil Fiore explored procrastination in The Now Habit. And one of his ideas gives us a useful place to begin. Not with, how do I force myself to finish? But, how do I choose to start? Think about the sentence. I have to finish this. It sounds responsible. But repeated often enough, have to can turn work into something that feels imposed. The deadline hasn't changed. The responsibility hasn't changed. But the way you experience the task has. Fiore makes a simple distinction between I have to and I choose to. When you stop saying, I have to finish this tonight, and start saying, I choose to work on this for the next 20 minutes, the task is still there. But you're no longer carrying the entire thing at once. You're choosing the beginning. And that leads to something even more important. Why does the finish line make starting feel so heavy? When the goal is to finish the project, your mind sees the whole project. Every part, every decision, everything that could go wrong. But starting doesn't require all of that. It requires one action. So instead of asking, how do I finish this? Ask, what would count as starting? Open the document. Write the first paragraph. Work on it for a defined period. The point isn't to make the task disappear. It's to stop making completion a requirement for beginning. And once you separate starting from finishing, another problem becomes visible. Why does work so often feel like something we have to escape from? Consider what happens when every enjoyable thing comes with a condition. I'll relax after I finish everything. But everything is rarely finished. So even when you're not working, part of your mind is still keeping score. That creates a strange relationship with work. Work becomes the price you pay for being allowed to enjoy yourself. Fiore's idea of guilt-free play challenges that relationship. Rest doesn't have to be a reward for perfect productivity. It can simply be part of life. And that matters because when work no longer feels endless, there's less reason to keep escaping from it. But there's still a practical question. How do you give work and free time a place without letting work consume the whole day? Most schedules tell us what we have to do, like work, study, meetings, deadlines. Then whatever remains is supposed to become free time. Fiore Unschedule reverses that logic. Instead of filling every available space with work, you account for the things that genuinely occupy your life, including recreation, and then identify realistic periods for focused work. The point isn't to make every minute productive. It's to stop treating the entire day as unfinished work. Work gets a boundary, free time gets a boundary, and when work has a beginning and an end, starting it becomes a smaller commitment. Which brings us to the part that matters most. What does this look like when you actually have to sit down and work? Not, I'm going to finish everything tonight. That's a promise to an outcome you can't fully control. Instead, for the next 20 minutes, this is what I'm doing. One task. No switching. No negotiating with yourself every 2 minutes. Just a defined period of work. Then stop, continue, or reassess. The important part isn't the number 20. It's the boundary. You're making a commitment to action, not demanding a particular result. And that creates something more useful than a temporary burst of enthusiasm. That gives an evidence that you can act without waiting to feel completely ready. So the next time an important task feels heavy, the approach changes. Not, I have to finish this. But, I choose to start. Not, I need to get everything done. But, what can I work on for the next defined period? Not, I can relax when everything is finished. But, work has its place. So does life. The work hasn't magically become easy. You've changed the conditions under which you approach it. And that is the useful extension. You don't always need to push harder against procrastination. Sometimes you need to make the act of beginning less loaded. So perhaps the practical shift is smaller than it first appeared. Choose instead of have to. Start instead of carrying the whole finish line. Work within boundaries instead of letting work occupy everything. Rest without turning it into another source of guilt. And most importantly, don't make feeling ready a prerequisite for starting. Because once starting no longer depends on the perfect feeling, you've changed something fundamental. You can act first. And perhaps after seeing this, you're ready to take that first step. But here's the interesting part. Motivation can give you a strong start. The real problem is what happens when that feeling fades. Because if motivation gets us moving, what keeps us going when motivation disappears? That's something we need to understand.